What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Comexposed. My name is Eugene Ramirez Mapondera.
And my name is Tinodiwa Zambe-Makoni, and today we've got an exciting episode, once again talking about something we've been discussing for quite some time.
Yeah. So I'm sure everyone has noticed that there's been heightened interest in African IP being bought up by Western studios. For example, you have Disney taking on Black Panther, which pretty much sparked interest and proved that African stories or African narratives with African-led characters are viable. But since then, we've seen a continuous trend. For example, Lucasfilm, which is popularly known for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, announced that they're taking up Children of Blood and Bone, which is actually an African novel series, which they're going to be adapting into film. And there are other examples, of course.
Yeah, we know of the Kugali team working with Disney on a project as well. Mm-hmm. We know of people like Youneek Studios, led by Roy Coupe, working alongside Dark Horse Comics to bring their universe into their side of things. So this is a trend that is picking up, that is growing. In our neighbors in South Africa, we know that there are lots of projects going on there with studios trying to work with foreign studios, especially the likes of Netflix and other streaming services to get their projects out there. So the desire to participate, take, or otherwise be involved with African ideas and IPs seems to be
more palatable now. It's a lot more it's a lot more viable, and that's where our discussion is going to be. We're going to look at why the sudden interest. We're going to talk about the benefits of some of these arrangements. So we can actually start there. What are the so-called benefits? Let's look at these cases of, what was the benefit of Disney, of course, pioneering this movement with Black Panther and proving that it actually works. How does that benefit us? People on the ground, African creatives making our IP and possibly being, in the marketplace, possibly selling it to them. What does that mean for us?
The benefits are broad, of course. I'm going to skip the benefits for the companies, for Disney. It goes without saying what their benefit is. But for the people this side, it creates an opportunity that they otherwise may not have had to get their IPs, their stories to a broader audience, to work within an engine, a production engine that is well versed with making your things global.
Hold on. So there's exposure.
The thing that artists don't like, but this is like real exposure. Because anybody asks you for exposure, instead of money, don't be foolish. Anyway, it does that. It helps their IPs reach the world. I hate to say it, but also money is more likely to come back to you. It may not be as much as you ought to get, but it is something. It gives you that opportunity. Then there's other advantages like the access to technologies, access to equipment, access to funding to even do your production. Instead of sitting here worrying how am I going to pay people, that's kind of taken care of. Instead of licenses for software, for hardware, if you need specific stuff made, you've got access to these mega studios who've done it thousands of times. If you even need technical expertise that you otherwise may not have had, let's say you're working with Paramount and they've got the opportunity to work with Cameron on that project. Maybe he can now come and technically advise you on some stuff in your project. There's those sorts of advantages.
I like what you said. So, as you mentioned, Cameron, I thought of District 9. Right? For those of you who don't remember District 9, it was one of the first feature films to be directed by a South African. Right? And he got to work with Peter Jackson of Lord of the Rings fame. Right? And I'm a big fan of the guy. His name escapes me for now. But we had that scenario, and it was good for him. But I want to use that as a pivot point, right? I just want to segue and say, to what extent does it, I want to be devil's advocate and say, how does that really benefit the African creative? Because I see it as an opportunity. Yes, he gets to rub shoulders or, learn from the best, but how does that actually build capacity for African storytellers?
It can, and it also may not. It's about how intentional that those creatives are about making it build capacity. If you're just going to sit there and be sidelined, these studios have deadlines, they have objectives. and they could just have you there for optics, to just say, there's the guy from Africa who's part of our production team. They're more than happy to do that. But if you are very intentional about it, you can say, no. This percentage of the crew must be from here. There must be a transference of knowledge. Otherwise, this does not progress. But if you don't have that intentionality, you can just go through the whole thing, get your paycheck, and nothing's actually been transferred.
An example comes to mind. Now that you mention it, his name just came back to me. It's Neil Blomkamp, right? So Neil is actually the guy who later on, he worked on Chappie, he also worked on Elysium, but in recent years he's been working under his own studio, shooting short films in South Africa with American stars. You know, he's got a particular short featuring the lady from Alien.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that I just remembered an example that actually validates what you said. But there is a sticky point here. I was having a conversation with a colleague about African music in film, and it got really cool. It got really interesting because it's like, okay, so this guy who was making the music for Black Panther, Ludwig Göransson, he came over to Africa and sampled Sierra Leonean drummers, you know, and he got the authentic sound. And from my perspective as a layperson, I was like, okay, he got some really authentic drum beats and so on. And this colleague of mine corrected me and is like, yeah, he got it, but then it was implemented in a very Western way. The time signature was all off. It wasn't authentically African. It referenced us, but then it kind of converted the source material so that it's acceptable to Western audiences. And I was like, whoa, that's deep. Because imagine how much that could impact, some of our favorite source material, like Children of Blood and Bone. How much of it is going to be Westernized so that it makes sense to that market? You see, there's that threat. You know, and it gets me thinking. I can't help but wonder, what does that mean for all of this material that they're buying up and saying, okay, we're taking it up, we're going to bear the burden of financing it and so on, but at what cost?
I don't know if it's a threat in so much as it is an expected aspect of it. I love Chinese food. I've had the benefit of having Chinese food in Zimbabwe and in China. I don't like Chinese food in China.
It's less Zimbabwean.
It's less Zimbabwean. Very much less Zimbabwean. So, for the market that you're selling it to, of course, if an American studio is going to come to Zimbabwe to make a production, they're not producing it for us. They don't even care about us right now in terms of we bootleg too much. We don't pay them any money for what they already make. So they're making it for their audience and they're going to make it palatable for them. The difference then happens in, let's say, regions, and I'll use Japan as an example because I have a sticking point with a lot of stuff in that regard. But when they make productions, they make them for their people. And that's fine. And that's how it stays extremely authentic. We now need a translation, but it stays very authentic to them. So if we want the same here, we need to make it for ourselves. Then it'll be authentic. But as long as the person paying the bills is planning on taking that production to their motherland, we've got to expect Tabo to be called Tabo. Or we've just got to be cool with it. We're going to have to let that happen. They're going to change the name and say that Umzingeli, no one can pronounce that, so we're going to call it Umi.
Or Zingi.
Or Zingi. We're just going to do that.
Hey, that's a very interesting perspective. And I like how you brought that up, and I was thinking the best segue would be, what are the actual benefits, I guess? What is it that they aspire to? And is that the only, and when I say they, I'm talking about African creators, is that the only place that they can sell their ideas to? Because what's the alternative? If there aren't enough resources to make the stuff locally, do we all just have to make a beeline to Disney, Netflix, Warner, Lucasfilm, that kind of thing?
I think that's the easy way out, the way that I don't like. But it's the way that everybody wants, because sadly, people want quick money. Or not, maybe that's kind of cruel to say that. People want to live. They want success now. They don't really want to be waiting another 20, 30, 40 years for that success to happen. Now, I know us as Comexposed kind of have a different viewpoint on that. We want the same industry that you see over there here. But the reality is that takes time. It's going to take, it took Disney, it took Marvel, it took Warner Brothers, MGM, or Paramount that industry to be what it is, for California to become what it is, for New York to become like a center of theater and stuff, for all of that to happen, took an industry growing. The same happened in China. They had their own renaissance. They all decided we're going to make these movies, we're going to churn them out. They did the same as Nigeria and had like churning out martial arts movies. Then they moved on. And they built their own cinema and so on.
Like Nollywood.
It took time. It took a lot of time. And the reality is big money, big productions, big studios will take us the same, maybe 50, 30, if we're lucky, years to get to the same point. So until we're dedicated to make that happen, like some other countries, places like Australia and Canada have the government heavily backing their industries being made. Maybe until we get to that point, we will always have to look towards the 10 cents and the MGMs to make the thing for us.
So I got a very controversial thought. I've got an issue with industries not, taking shape like locally, and because of that, our different governments, leaders, whatever, don't really perceive the film industry or the entertainment industry as an industry, right? So I'm going somewhere with this. In the same way we have international mining companies coming to Africa and setting up mines, they have this social corporate responsibility, right? They fix up roads, they fix up schools, whatever. And in a sense, they give back to the community they're taking from, right? So because we don't have recognition of film industries or entertainment industries that come from Africa, I feel like those Western companies are getting away scot-free by literally mining ideas, people, creatives. We've heard of brain drain, that kind of thing, without there being some kind of regulation that makes them commit to actually helping grow the capacity of filmmakers in these various African countries. So it's a one-way street where ideas and resources, well, it's nothing new, they're taking a one-way trip. And when you come back to our respective African countries, there's actually no growth as a result. You've got one or two people, the 1%, the lucky few, the same people we now see Africans that sit on the board of, organizations like Netflix. And of course, I'm not disregarding or, forgetting any of his contributions to Southern Africa, for example. But how often does that happen? What does this actually mean for the multiple African studios that should grow or benefit the African writers, the African, comic book authors who are now trying to sell off their stuff? What do we say about the so-called comic book studios left here, on the motherland?
Well, first off, anyone who does come and do business anywhere, they are really altruistic. Even in the case of mining companies or any other consortiums that come and do business in Africa, they're being forced, like you've rightfully pointed out. They're forced to give back. If they couldn't, if they didn't have to, they would never try to give back. KFC does not care about Zimbabwe. They would happily just do their thing. If they could import all the chickens and all the sauces, they would. It's only them being forced to maybe use local product. But it still comes back to that what you get back is dependent on your drive to get something back. And maybe the real problem is that the African creatives aren't or have not reached the point of maturity or self-confidence to demand that we get something back whenever we make these kind of arrangements. We'll never get Netflix and all that to adhere to being nice to us. They don't need to care.
It's pretty cutthroat. It's
business, and they're going to look for the cheapest way to get the most money. And that's okay. We should just do tit for tat, shall we say, in that regard, and say, it's cool, you want to do that? We also want our bang for buck.
So where is it working out? I mean, it's obviously not all doom and gloom. There's access to international audiences, which is great.
Which is very good.
Which is great.
Very, very good.
And at the same time, there's ownership of intellectual property. Children of Blood and Bone, the entire franchise is now in the hands of Lucasfilm. Right? And that's an amazing series of books. So, other than that, other than the international audiences and, of course, the money, what else is, what's the upside? What are the other positive sides?
I guess the positives, the other upside, besides access to markets, is experience. Some of the greatest films we know today are great because those directors have had their years of releasing junk. They did it already, and they tested stuff on audiences. Right now, we're all trying to figure out this Rubik's Cube of what it is even our audience really want, what really speaks to them. And so having the opportunity to execute ideas does give us a chance to really find out what that is and refine it, make that sweet chili chicken.
Okay, I like the point that you brought out because I was looking at some of the different standards of production that are applied or taken up by Western studios, and I don't think some studios here would have ever aspired or even planned to use certain types of equipment, take certain measures and so on. Take, for example, Netflix. They actually have documents out there that state what kind of camera they need you to shoot your stuff on, for example, right? And I believe some studios here never thought of acquiring those cameras or knew that the standard had gone way up from HD and guys are now shooting on, Dragons and those kinds of cameras. So,
until there's a demand for something, you're not really going to execute. Exactly. It's like Game of Thrones. Until they needed to do Game of Thrones, they didn't make rigs for those giant dragons
and that kind of thing.
So similarly, until we are demanded to make a nyami movie, we're not ever going to make massive sets and rigs, and that's one of the good things. That
So I always come back to this point and I say, there's a lack of awareness or knowledge or education on the intricacies of production. So you can have people trying to adapt, let's take a comic book for example, into a movie, and they're not going to do pre-production. They're going to be like, okay, there's the comic book, we're just going to copy what happens in it. They're not going to find a screenwriter who translates this for film, and but thanks to these experiences that these guys, the various lucky writers we've mentioned, thanks to their experiences, we can start to observe and say, you know what, we were cutting corners, guys. And we might need to, we need to catch up. Yes, it's going to take money, but if we were to do it here, and if we wanted to match that standard, we need to be able to try this and, follow these different processes. And it helps get rid of that notion that I'm tired of, which is, why don't you guys just make an animated movie? It's this perception that it's easy just because it's being done quickly by the West. So I'm glad that it introduces that sense of awareness. There's an educational, learning curve right there, and it's beneficial for the guys who are trying to do it on the ground.
I remember one thing, a distinct little experience I had whilst at Warner Brothers. Like their lot, you can do tours. I mean, anyone can just go and do a tour of the studios and stuff there. And walking through the set and all that, I saw these massive constructed sets. We watch all those TV shows where they've got the neighborhood, and they've got all those things,
like for friends, the apartments
and
for friends,
all that stuff.
And
So I saw those sets, and I thought to myself, hey, with the film industry in Zimbabwe, everyone goes and gets an actual house. They seem to have to go to the actual location. They have to actually produce the practical things. Whereas the big studios, all of it's fake. And then the rest is the clever editing and so on. So the industry had advanced so far that you could go and rent studio space and get your show running. The equivalent of you here thinks that he has to go and talk to some hotel, rent it out for a period of time, do all this, get specialist lighting. The guy in America is removing an entire wall because it's fake, and he can get the lighting he wants and the setup he wants. So is that, I thought to myself after leaving there I thought, we put ourselves under way too much pressure in Africa to match America without knowing that America isn't doing what it looks like America is doing. They've just refined the process enough to make it simpler and cheaper for them. We're incurring costs we don't need because we don't know.
So in closing, do you think there's a future where African creatives, because there are a lot more people writing graphic novels, making animated shorts, that kind of thing. Do you see a future where we could know enough and have an industry that's mature enough for us to actually say, either no, we don't want you guys to produce this, we're going to keep this homegrown, or where we'll be able to negotiate and actually come out on top?
I believe in such a future. Its likelihood of occurring is what's a bit tricky. You can negotiate only when you have pieces worthy of negotiating with, when you're on equal footing with whom you're negotiating. And as long as we're using an American or Asian playbook, we will never have a strong standing. And as I'm sure most people who talk to me, I'm very aware, I'm so much a fan of shut the borders. And get everybody out. Let us make stuff for us. Let's literally copy and paste. I've got such an issue with people who are into foreign medias, particularly the Asian ones. And
African people who are interested in
Asian,
Eastern
stuff. And
media.
they're like, wow, anime and manga is doing so great. They're doing so wonderful. But they never analyze how they got there and have not seemed to stop and think that where we are today is where those industries were 30, 40, 50 years ago. And those guys turned in on themselves and said, we'll make stuff for ourselves, we'll create our own standards, we'll match our narratives, we'll talk to our people, and then expand. And we could be that in a few years, where the world will be looking, the way right now people are looking and saying Asian, European comics are done. It's now all about manga. It could be the same in 20 years where they're like, Asian comics are done. It's now all about African ones. By just doing the same thing. Let's focus on ourselves, give ourselves value. When we're there, now we can negotiate with other people and say that, no, you don't do that here. We don't do that here.
I guess one thing that we definitely need to put out there as a disclaimer for probably our upcoming aspiring artists, younger audiences, there isn't a gold rush, right? A literal gold rush where studios are just picking up whatever they want from Africa. It's really important to note at this point that you've got organizations like Comic Republic Media, you've got, of course, Royo Coupe, you have Loiso, and those people have been making this kind of material for over a decade. And they've been putting in a lot of hard work. And the point that I wanted to stress is, it's not just because we're African that our stuff will get picked up. It's because those amongst us who have been doing the best work, the most outstanding work, the likes of you mentioned Roye. There's a guy the guy who did the space opera, the Paul Louis. I butchered his name. But again, those guys are really...
I'm thinking, what, Midas Monkey?
Yes, Midas Monkey, exactly. So those guys are amazing. And just as a disclaimer to our audience there, it's not just that all of a sudden anyone's just cherry picking African creatives. It's the result of a lot of hard work. And it goes without saying, you've got to put in the work.
The people who are being selected, it is so clear that they're incredibly deserving and that they are putting in the work. The quality is there. There's no question of it. There's no way someone from overseas is wanting to invest in something that is untested and is of questionable standards and quality. So by no means are we saying that Africa needs film handouts. It's just do the work, do quality work, it'll get picked up, but I also think we should do it for ourselves.
You know what else you should do for yourself? If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, smash that subscribe button. And if you haven't checked out our website, please do visit www.comexposed.com.
Want to say something? Say it in the comments. Be nice.
Thanks for joining us today. This has been an awesome conversation. If you've got any thoughts of your own, hey, remember you can also comment and check out our other social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You'll find us there. Hopefully we'll be doing stuff on Twitch like we've been promising for the past year. But until then, I'm Eugene Ramirez Mapondera.
And I'm Tinodiwa Zambe-Makoni.
Catch you next time and believe in yourself.